Sick dog scares away tweaker. Back in early March of 2012, my dog had a rare type of cancer that was causing her skin to fall off, including her paw pads. It was painful for her to walk, but as she was a type of dog who just heard the word walk would dance around and bark, I still once a day would take her on a short walk to a patch of grass on the side of our townhouse complex. She was as large as she was lovable, a yellow lab that towered over other labs. To give you an idea of how gentle she was, once a Jack Russell, a dog she could have literally swallowed, bite her nose, and she hid behind my husband. She was the type of dog that made friends with little kids at the dog park and would somehow get them to throw the tennis ball for her, even though she was often twice their size. There was a special needs girl who lived down the street who she would lick all over her face, and the girl would giggle in delight. So we walked at a short distance to the patch of grass. She slowly walks, and pathetically, as she is in a lot of pain, we get to the grass, and I see her contemplating doing her business. As it likely painful to squat, she's on the grass, covered by the fence, and I am on the sidewalk near the road. All of a sudden, we hear a quick, erratic run coming towards us. Now, as my dog is hidden from view, it is likely this person didn't realize that I had a dog with me. My dog, who 1 minute before could barely walk, sprints into action, growling, barking, and running towards this guy running my way. My dog is losing her shit as this guy gets to us. He stops right in front of us. I'm holding on to my dog for dear life as she tries to go after this guy, and I am staring at this guy, shocked. He looks at me, looks at her, looks at me, looks at her, and looks at me one last time, twitching in a weird way the entire time, and finally says, "I hate my life," and runs erratically in the opposite directions. That was the last time I took her all the way out to the side of the road, as she died about 1 week later. Wife home alone hears heavy breathing. Love the subreddit. This occurred to my wife and I right after I left the Marines. This story is much shorter than my last. After leaving the military, I was obsessed with jogging and hiking. I liked pushing myself to see how much weight I could carry and how far I could run and hike. Every Sunday morning at 5, my wife would drive me 8 miles from our apartment. I would road march with a heavy pack through my town back home. This particular Sunday was very warm. She dropped me off at the location. We said our goodbyes and she returned to the apartment. It is not terribly dangerous where we live, but having done some combat deployments, I was always aware of my surroundings. Therefore, I was carrying the handgun that was typically located in our bedroom. When my wife returned to the apartment, she noticed that there was a white Honda which was parked near the front of our unit, which had not been there before. She thought this was odd, because it was so early on a Sunday morning. She thought about not getting out of her car because she was a little creeped out. She decided to go in but walk quickly. She got back into bed to try and get some sleep while I hiked home. Our apartment was a ground level unit, and there was a large bush located in front of our window with gravel surrounding it. As she laid in bed, she heard some slight shifting of the gravel. She lay there silently listening. Then she heard heavy breathing, which she said sounded like there was someone with their lips right to our window. Due to the heat, our window was open, and there was still a screen and large drapes. My wife lay there silently for several minutes while the breathing continued. I don't know what came over her, but she got ballsy. She jumped up on the bed and threw the drapes open. She saw a grown man standing there, who immediately turned around the corner of the wall out of view. She didn't say anything to this man, but he could see his shadow from the light above the door to the unit next to ours. The man stood there still breathing really heavily. She described it almost intentionally loud. In a flash, the man took off in a dead sprint for the white Honda. My wife said she had no idea what to do because she was so terrified he would return. She knew I had the gun. She grabbed the K-bar, the large military-style fixed blade knife that I kept underneath the mattress. She waited for about 5 minutes before running out of the house and getting in her car. She drove the route I had told her I was hiking and found me. I remember it due clearly because my wife's car pulled up and she was bawling and had my large knife in her hands. She explained everything. She drove me home. I called the police on the way. When we arrived, the white Honda was gone. The police and apartment reported that they had received reports of suspicious, unknown what that meant, activity happening recently in the early mornings. He was never caught to my knowledge. It creeps me out to this day that someone is still out there, probably getting brazen every time he gets away with something. Not as scary as some of these, but when you consider how close your loved one could have come, gives me the creeps. Followed home by 8 angry drunks. I'm a female college senior, and this story happened in March of 2012. Two of my friends really wanted to go see the midnight premiere of The Hunger Games. I didn't really know much about it, despite all the hype, but I decided to go because movies are always fun, right? So we head off to the theater, which is about a mile walk from my dorm. We get there, enjoy the movie, and start walking back home. Since it is a pretty long movie, I'd say it was around 3 a.m. when we were all walking back. Everything is going fine and we're just chatting and walking down the sidewalk. Not long after we started our journey, we walk by a house with about 8 drunk college guys on the porch. They start catcalling and shouting things at us, trying to get us to come talk to them. I just kept looking forward and ignored them as I walked by. However, it seemed to be physically impossible for my 2 friends to take shit from people, and they're both easily angered, confrontational, and stubborn. So of course, my friend Steph decides to shout some wise-ass insults to the guys as we walk by. Oh boy, she has now angered 8 drunk guys at 3 a.m. with nobody else around. All these guys leave the porch and start following us, shouting angrily. I am a little afraid and hoping that the guys were just going to follow us for a few seconds to scare us. However, they kept at it, and a lot of their comments made it seem like they wanted to hurt us. Of course, my 2 friends start shouting more insults, which just antagonizes the guys further. My friend Liz is even saying, "I hope they try to fight us." At this point, I pulled my cell phone out, and I've already typed in 911, and I'm just waiting to hit the call button in case the guys try anything. Steph and Liz are busy pulling out pencils and pens and anything they can to stab in case we come to a fight. At this point, I have a pen in one hand and my cell phone in the other hand, and I really want my friends to stop shouting back at these guys, because we're getting closer and closer to my dorm, and I'm afraid they'll follow us in. You can't get into these dorms without a key fob, but, it's easy enough to just wait until somebody opens the door and follow them in. These guys are getting closer and closer and sounding very frightening, so we fast walked to my dorm and went inside. The guy just stared at us and walked past. I hurried to get us to my room, so they wouldn't know which was mine. Steph and Liz were so hyped afterwards and were saying things like, "I wish they had tried something." I thought that was very, very naive of them, but then again, I was just happy I hadn't peed my pants. Old Man George. It was early March, still cold enough to see your breath outside, and I was walking home, alone. I had spent the evening at my mom's house hanging out and talking into the wee hours of the morning, so it was 3 or 4 a.m. by the time I'd set off. I was used to walking about the town, as we had lived there for over a decade, and I was aware of my surroundings. However, our town is home to the old Illinois State Mental Hospital, Choate Mental Health, so it added this eerie feeling, especially in the dead of night, that I was always leery of. Many of the patients live in and around the town now, since it had closed down. One of the men, a man in his late 60s, happened to live right beside us with his wife Donna. His name was George, and I never really considered him a threat. He was balding naturally, liver spots dotted his skin, and he looked just like a normal army veteran would. All throughout the year, he would sit out front of his house on his porch swing and yell at traffic because people had started speeding down his road. If we happened to step out for a cigarette, he would make a polite conversation with us. Mostly he talked about guns and how he had a lot of them. He talked about how he was ready for the end of the world to come so he could use them all. My boyfriend didn't seem to mind, but I just shyly smiled and gave a dry yeah. I knew we were on his good side though when he offered to give us one of his guns for protection. We declined. There was heavy breeze blowing over our town all night, so the leaves had scattered everywhere, scraping again, the sidewalks making me even more paranoid. I looked behind me at almost every step. I quickened my pace around the corners of sidewalks, below all the creepy houses perched on a hill, abandoned. The streetlight right above me flickered, and a strong wind hit me in the face, chilling my skin and making my eyes water when I heard yelling. It seemed like arguing, but I wasn't going to stop to listen. I started walking faster now, almost at a run when the voices got closer and closer. I realized I was going towards them. The light was on in George's house, and I could recognize the voices now as I walked past, and I felt a little better knowing it was just George and Donna. I walked up in between both the houses to make it to the back porch when I realized what they were saying. They were in fact arguing about something. Donna being the small, frail woman she is, I was starting to worry. I listened. "I can't do it anymore, Donna. I won't be 70. They'll take me at 70. "Honey, who? What are you talking about?" "I'm not gonna let them fucking do it. Fuck! Let me have my misery." By now, I can hear Donna starting to sob, and I can't listen anymore. I didn't want to be around if he decided he was going to pull out one of his numerous guns. I hurry inside and get in bed and just lay there, thinking, trying to understand what I had heard. After much tossing and turning, I finally doze off. Around 10 in the morning, my phone keeps getting text message after text message that I can no longer ignore, because it's going off that much, it must be important. I barely open my eyes and read the text from my friend Kim, who lives up the road. "Are you okay? There's like 10 cops and 2 ambulances out front y'all's house." I sit up in a daze and pull the curtain back right as they're bringing a stretcher out of George's house. I notice there's blood leaking through the sheet around the person's face that is clearly covered. I shiver and try to take it all in. George shot himself in the head that morning while he was in bed with Donna. Donna was asleep when he put the barrel in his mouth and awoke to her husband's brain matter covering her face. I shudder to imagine who he could have taken with him, and even more so, that there's still dozens of people in that town just like him. The Stalker in the Backyard. Hey everyone. So this is my first time writing or posting anything on Reddit. Although I am a regular reader, the story I'm about to tell you is about a personal experience of my own. Around the time I was 14 years old in 2011. I'm from a small town in northern Quebec, and at the time of these events, I was still living there. The population of this town was about 1,800 people, and to give you some insight, it's very tightly knit, and everyone knows each other, and that gives the town some kind of comfort. Kids are allowed to play outside and go to the park in town without any parental supervision, because everyone knows each other, and as I said, the community is very tightly knit, so there isn't a lot of anxiety of people there. The first incidents began in March of 2011. My parents had gone grocery shopping, and the nearest grocery store was about an hour and a half from my town. On top of this, we were experiencing a snowstorm, and they had taken my little brother with them, his name Eagle. At this time, he's about 7 years old. I was home alone all evening, which is nothing out of the ordinary, because I was used to staying alone, and if anything, my best friend lives across the street, and a good family friend next door who would check on me occasionally when my parents weren't home to make sure everything was good. I was alone at 11 p.m. waiting for my parents to arrive, and I looked outside the large front window of my house, which faces the street, and I'd seen a person standing at the driveway entrance to my house, staring at my front door, completely dressed in black, and I couldn't make out if this was a man or a woman, and I couldn't see the face even though they were facing my house directly. I dropped to the floor in shock because my front door was not locked, and I didn't want this person to know I was alone. I stayed here for a few moments and got up and looked out my window, and this person had gone. When my mom arrived, I told her about my weird experience, but she told me it was probably one of my dad's friends checking if we were home, but I was pretty shaken. A couple weeks later, I was cleaning my room, and there was still a large amount of snow outside, and my backyard in winter is impossible to get around because of the snow, and it's just forest behind. So one night around, I'm cleaning my room, and I hear someone start banging loudly on my bedroom window, and I crawled under my bed and started screaming for my mother, refusing to look out the window at all. When my mom entered my room, I told her what had happened, and she told me to stop overreacting, and it was probably just the wind. Or maybe my dad dropped something in the basement, so I brushed it off and went without incident, until July. One day I was swimming in my backyard, and in one of those larger inflatable pools for families, and someone threw a large rock at me and hit me. I got right up and told my brother to stop, but he wasn't there, and there was nobody outside. I didn't really know what to think of it. I just thought it was weird, and when I asked my mom where my brother was, she said he was inside with her the whole time. This is where stuff actually gets really weird. The next morning, my mom asked me why there's so much large rocks in our pool and if I did it or if my brother did it. I told her no, but I told her again about the person who threw the rock at me the day before, and she thought it was probably my friends. This happens every day for a week. Each day we empty the pool only to find more rocks the following morning, and I grew tired of my mom blaming me or my friends and not knowing who kept doing this. Then I was laying in bed. This was at night also, and I was trying to go to bed, and someone banged on my window. And I just bolted out of my room and told my parents, but it was the same response. You're overreacting. It's probably your friends. It's probably your imagination. Then I realized this is probably the same person from this winter. So I asked a good friend of mine at the time, Kobe, to help catch whoever this is once and for all. And it was a weird situation, and we were always into scary stories and found ourselves in the excitement and mystery of one. And I guess you could say we didn't take my situation as seriously as we should have. So the week after the rock incident started, we put up a tent on my balcony because my parents like us all to watch the stars and have snacks and look at the northern lights. And the balcony is really large, enough for our tent, and whenever friends sleep over, we were in there usually. Then one night me, Kobe, and Eagle are at home, and I had to get something in the tent. I open the door, and it's about 10 p.m., and I see a flashlight shining around and go off. I tell Kobe someone's there, and we should take our shot at catching them, and he grabs his bat and goes and checks it out, but no one is there. Eventually, me and Eagle move onto the balcony, hear the grass moving, and getting fast. Then this person shines their flashlight on me, and I see that it's the person from March, who's dressed in all black. Me and Eagle run into the house, and this person chases us, but I luckily lock the door, and Kobe runs down the streets. So at this point, we're even more curious. We had got ourselves snacks and stayed out in the tent until like 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning for about 5 straight days, determined to catch this person and find out who they are. Each long-waited night, no one came. I figured it was done, and whoever that person was had finally just given up. On the 6th day, my dad suddenly burst into my room and starts yelling, "What did you do to the tent?" at me. I have no idea what he's even talking about. We go outside, and the tent is gone from the balcony, nowhere in sight. Not in a crawl space under my balcony, not in the backyard, not in the street, nowhere to be found. The only thing left was our mattress on the balcony. Someone took out the mattress and took out the tent. We hid out in for those 5 days, waiting to catch them, and left the mattress. I would always walk to my grandma's and my best friend, who lived across townhouse. One day I was hanging out at my grandma's, and she told me that she had seen a person all black standing in her backyard in the early morning around 5 a.m. At my best friend's, we were sitting in the basement watching movies in the dark, and we had seen someone peek into the basement window. There were so much weird little things that happened like this. Kobe had even seen someone following him home, but I couldn't see them because of the dark, and my other friend, the one who had seen the person peeking in the basement with me, had said that her parents were complaining about someone messing with their boat things in the backyard, and we even found her screen window to the basement broken, but that was it. The rest of the year went by eventless, and the stalker was just a weird memory that my parents disregarded from their 14-year-old daughter. I guess the situation was too absurd. I really thought it was the end of it. It was truly the end, right? But one December night, I spent the day out and I left the door unlocked because I lost my set of house keys and my family had went out of town for the weekend. I walked into my house and turned on my lights. I went to the washroom and my 2 dogs were sitting beside the stairs. Then I heard what sounded like movement in my basement and a cough from a man, and my dogs went crazy and just started barking and looking down at the basement. My uncle came to check it out, but there was nothing, and it's just a big storage place in our basement, and 2 rooms have no lights, and there's no windows there at all. At 2 a.m. that morning, after feeling so uncomfortable in my house and having my dogs refuse to leave the entrance to the basement staircase, I started hearing movement again, and breathing, coming from there, and sounds of someone walking up the steps, and my dogs started growling, and then they began barking again. I ran outside with my phone and shoes and just ran to my grandmother's and stayed there that night. Although the next day we found a set of footprints leaving from the back door. I'm not sure if it was the same person, but I never had any experiences like that since. I have moved towns not long after that. We never found out who it was, if it was a man or woman, if I knew them. It still haunts me to this day and makes me anxious about being alone at my new home now. So, stalker in my backyard, let's not meet. Does anyone have a shotgun? My aunt passed away in March of 2012. She was young, and her death was unexpected, so it was a very difficult time for my family. The week before her funeral, our close families and friends gathered at a picnic spot at the beach to have an informal memorial for her and share her memories, etc. My aunt's more distant friends were invited via Facebook. However, for the most part, we all knew who was there for the gathering, except for one man. I remember him showing up on a bicycle. I was sitting at a picnic table with my dad and a few cousins when the man rode up to the group and sat down at the table with us. I didn't really think much of this, assuming he was one of my aunt's friends who I hadn't met yet. We had all been going around sharing our favorite memories of my aunt, just kind of chatting and beginning to heal. The man was sitting diagonally across from me at the table, listening to everyone speak with a calm expression. One of my younger cousins, who was about 3 years old at the time, was sitting next to him, throwing a little bit of a tantrum about wanting to go swimming. The man had not spoken at all since arriving, but out of nowhere he turns to me and says in a very calm, quiet voice, "Does anyone have a shotgun?" Nobody else seemed to have heard this, so I stuttered out no, while looking at him with an obvious what the fuck look on my face. "Why do you ask?" I said, shocked by his question and creeped out because A, I had no idea who he was, and B, he hadn't spoken at all before asking this. Nodding his head towards my tantrum-throwing cousin, he says, "I shit you not." He goes, "'Cause I want to use it on her, that little girl." I really can't describe how utterly horrified I was in this moment. Here I was, mourning the death of my beloved aunt in the company of my loved ones, and here is this stranger telling me he wants to murder my cousin. On top of that, nobody seems to have noticed this little exchange, and I'm too scared to make a scene about it. I simply don't have a response for him. I just couldn't articulate the amount of what the actual fuck that I was feeling in that moment. Before I knew it, the guy gets up with the creepiest fucking smirk on his face, gets back on his bike and rides off. I turned to my dad and asked him if he knew who that guy was. He was kind of engrossed in the conversation everyone else was having about my aunt, so I didn't really have his full attention, but he said he didn't know him. I told my dad what the creepy fuck said, and he didn't really take me seriously, trying to brush it off as, "You probably didn't hear him right. Why would he say something like that?" So, that's the thing that happened. Never saw the guy again. Don't freak out, but there's a guy with a mask on behind you. I've never been a girl who was scared easily. I routinely watch crime shows, horror movies, etc. However, a night in March 2012 changed all that for me. I was attending college for music in 2005, and I recently seen one of my favorite violinists. Inspired, I had asked a pianist friend to accompany me while I played a piece. Looking back, it wasn't smart on our part to go at night to the college's music practice rooms, which are nearly soundproof and separated from the rest of the building. I figured since it was across the street from my campus police HQ, we must be okay, right? Was I ever wrong? My friend and I are in a practice room for about 15 minutes when she looks at me and says, "Don't freak out, but there's a guy with a mask on behind you." Now, this is college. There are plenty of stupid people doing stupid stuff there. When I turn around, I realized this was something much more sinister. There, crouched on the other side of the practice room's glass door, is a thin guy about 5'7" or 5'8", wearing a blonde curly wig, the Groucho Marx glasses, nose combo thing, a hideous shirt, just a personal judgment, and the creepiest smile ever. That's right, no pants or underwear, just his small penis out. When I turn around, he waves, and then enters this tiny practice room. My friend and I try to remain calm because we honestly don't know what to do. Then this guy tries to strike up small talk with us. and mentions he heard me talking about my favorite violinist. Apparently, he's been standing outside the practice room the entire time. He knows our names, where I'd gone that day, where my hometown is, my guy problem at the time, etc., 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 etc. As soon as possible, my friend and I book it out of there. He was blocking the door most of the time, so we were really scared. As we're leaving, he says, "Let's do it again!" And then he called my name. Of course, we go to the campus PD immediately, and they think it's all pretty funny. The next day, I'm sitting in choir when the dean comes in and says, "Hey, a friend of your cousin stopped by today. He said he wanted to give you some CDs." And then it was the CD of my favorite violinist. He asked for the girl who plays violin with your first name, so I assumed it was you. I tell him what happened, and he's furious because the campus security didn't even do anything. That's when the stalking began. He soon was clever enough not to go by the music office ever again, but my dorm neighbors would tell me a guy was looking for me to give me some kind of gift. One time, a stack of CDs from various violinists were sitting in my assigned seat for choir. Another time, they were outside my door, all the while the campus security doing nothing. Some people even suggested I enjoy the attention. Things died down when I finally moved off campus, and stopped altogether when I moved away from the college town, until 2 years later, when I moved back to the same town. The first week back, I received a direct message on Twitter saying, "Glad you're back. I've missed you. Let's get together and listen to my favorite violinist's name." I reported it to the real police, who haven't caught the person to my knowledge. All they knew is the address came from somewhere other than my city. Part of me is still waiting for the knock on the door, or a present left at my work or home. Bus station creep. This happened March 21st of this year. I was visiting my long-distance boyfriend for spring break, so I rode a Greyhound bus to Illinois from Texas, and then Illinois back to Texas. I'd done this before, and I never experienced anything bad, so this really scared the fuck out of me. I was outside waiting for my bus in Champaign. It was supposed to be there about 9:15. The bus station handles Greyhound and city buses. The first occurrence of a young man walking up to me was nice and wasn't scary. He just asked if I lived around there because he thought I was cute. He left after he found out I was going back to Texas. The next encounter started to weird me out. An older guy walked past me with a young girl, looked me up and down and said, "Hey," and walked away. I called my boyfriend because I was getting a little freaked out because no one ever looks at me, ever. So on the phone with boyfriend, the guy comes back, asks if I'm on the phone with my baby daddy, and I say, "My boyfriend." He starts talking to me while on the phone, trying to interrupt my conversation, asking pointless questions like, "Why are you alone? Why isn't your man with you?" This is when my heart felt like it was beating in my throat. Then he got closer. It felt like his eyes were burning holes into me. This guy slowly starts inching closer to me. The more I'm on the phone and looking dead at him, I start talking about Outlast with boyfriend as I feel around in my pocket for my mace. I keep backing up, trying to inch away. This guy's hand goes down and grabs himself in front of me. He winks at me. A bus showed up just as he were about an arm's length away from me. He asks if that's my bus, and I say yes, and he runs the fuck out of there. I wasn't sure if this was or not, but I didn't want to be secluded with that guy. It turned out it was, and I hope I never experience that again. My friend and I were stalked at a football game. It was my freshman year of high school, and it was our homecoming football game. All of my friends at the time were in band except for one, so we always went to the games together to watch our band friends perform at halftime. As it was homecoming, the bleachers were incredibly crowded, so my friend and I, we'll call her Mary, were forced to stand around different parts of the stadium during the game. Halftime came, and we were leaning on the railing watching our friends march in the band. Then someone came up next to me and leaned almost against me. He was an elderly man, and he looked at Mary and I and said that he had a grandson in the band, but that's not why he was there. She and I thought he was an old man trying to be friendly. but at that time the band had finished performing and the drill team went out onto the field. He nudged me and pointed to them and said, "I came to watch them. Those girls sure are pretty." Mary and I were a little creeped out. This guy had to be over 65 years old, and the girls on the drill team were in between 14 and 18. We laughed nervously and tried to ignore him. I turned my back to him and hoped he would pick up on our body language. He didn't. He stayed right there next to us and kept saying disturbing things, like how he wished the drill team had shorter skirts. I told Mary I need to go to the bathroom, and asked her to come with me. She came and we hid in the bathroom for a few minutes. We knew this was fucking creepy, and didn't know what to do. She was really thin and I was really short, so we weren't intimidating. At the time, I hadn't yet started kickboxing, and I'd taken no self-defense courses. We were both pretty much helpless, and wanted that guy to leave us alone. All of our scary-looking friends were in the band, and they had to stay in the bleachers nowhere near us. We left the bathroom and didn't see him, and we went back to the game. About an hour later, he found us again. He stood right next to Mary, uncomfortably close, and said that he had been looking for us, and wondered where we had gone off to. She and I both panicked a little bit, and just laughed nervously. Our parents had dropped us off, and since we were both 14 years old, we couldn't drive and had no way to get home. One of our band friends already had plans to take us home after the game, and we didn't see her a lot and didn't want to bail just by calling our moms. Also, we wanted to watch the actual game. After about 15 minutes of Mr. Creep standing by us, he turned to Mary and I and said, "I'm getting hungry. Do you pretty girls want me to buy you anything to eat or drink?" Mary didn't even get to say anything before I said we were both fine and weren't hungry or thirsty. Genuine disappointment filled his face, and I didn't think it was because we refused his hospitality. I seriously think he wanted to buy us something to drink so he could drug us. This guy had been giving me rapist and murder and stalker vibes all night. And Mary and I stayed there a while. He wanted to get himself something to eat or drink. We went to find somewhere else to stand for the rest of the game. The game ended, our school won, and we met up with our friends. Mary and I almost forgot about the creepy guy, laughing and joking with our band friends. At about midnight, Mary and I went out to the parking lot with our older friend, we'll call her Linda, to get her car. The creepy man wasn't even on our minds, and we hadn't told any of our other friends about him. We got to our car, and Mary got in the passenger seat and I got in the back seat. Linda was taking her time starting the car and was talking to Mary about something unrelated. I looked out the window and over towards the stadium. Most everyone was gone by then, so I felt a little uneasy when I saw a dark figure in the parking lot coming towards our car. I didn't say anything to Linda or Mary. I squinted to try and get a better look. The figure walked under a streetlight, and my stomach and heart dropped. It was the creepy man. There were no other cars parked around or even near Linda's, and she was right by the road. There were no houses across the street, so I could rule out his home being within walking distance. I knew then, and I am still convinced, that he was purposefully heading for Linda's car because he saw Mary and I get in it. I kicked Mary's seat and said, "It's him. We have to go." Mary looked out the window and saw him, and she started to breathe heavily. She hit Linda's arm and told her to take us home now. At the time, I was a huge scaredy cat, so Linda didn't think me being scared was anything to worry about. Mary, however, didn't scare easily. Nobody followed us to my house, and Mary and I ran inside and made sure all the doors and windows were locked. My parents and brother were asleep. She and I went to my room, locked my bedroom door, and just hugged each other in appreciation that we were both okay. We didn't sleep that night. We kept the TV on for constant noise and comfort. We laid right next to each other in my bed, still freaking out. Nothing else happened. I never saw that guy again, and this event contributed to my severe distrust of men and strangers. Follow the wind home. Okay, so this one took place a little more than a year after the autumn road and the creek's crossing. It was sometime in March, and the wind was still blowing, with a slight chill in it. My bros, Stanford, Stanley, George, and Arnold, were hanging out together with some kids down the streets to the left of the top of the Monster. For those who don't know, the Monster is what I call the large steep hill that one walks and drives to get to my house. They talked about this really cool place in the forest behind their friend's house, which had trees and such that seemed to grow into a sort of dome. They urged me to come with them, saying it would be a really cool place to set up base for our investigations. So I grabbed my MP3 player and went with them, only to begin to feel sick after checking the place out. Not wanting to hinder their fun, I said I'd head back home before I began to feel worse, and they begged me to stay. Unfortunately, I just didn't feel I could handle sticking around any longer, so I said goodbye and told the boys I'd see them at home, where I would attempt to kick their butts at Super Smash Melee. They took me up on my challenge and said they'd hold me to it. Then I started the 15-minute journey home. I've been listening to one song the whole time, and kept it on loop as I walked the windy streets. I was grateful to find the wind pushing my hair back for much of the way home, but it suddenly shifted and began to push me from behind, causing my loose hair to temporarily blind me. As I fought to pull my hair back, I realized that, as before, the wind never let up. It wasn't a gust every few minutes or even every few seconds. It was all one long breeze, as if someone had turned a super-powered fan on full blast. It was so strong, I found it hard to stand still, and was very nearly knocked over by the force. Realizing the wind wasn't going to let up anytime soon, I decided to use it to my advantage by turning around to face the wind so I could pull my hair back. This is when I noticed a red truck. At first, I thought that the driver was just driving slow because I was so close to the road, and he was waiting for me to step further away so as to not risk hitting me. So I stepped aside. I stepped so far over, in fact, that I nearly went over the ledge on that side of the road. It wasn't a very far drop, maybe 5 feet or so, but it was rather steep, and I didn't much like the thought of falling over this ledge. Still, they drove slowly, keeping behind me all the while, okay? So I'm easily 6 feet away from the road, and he's still doing this. I come to a stop. I had no other choice, due to the drop-off. I knew I would have to either cross the road to the other side or wait for this guy to pass me so I could take to walking the 3-foot length of the drop-off on the road itself. As I stopped, I pulled my headphones out of my MP3 player and tucked them in a hole inside my jacket pocket, and pulled up my music device just enough so I could feign texting on a phone. Luckily, my music device looked enough like a cell phone to be believably mistaken for one if not closely examined. I threw an occasional glance at the truck while feigning the act of texting on what I was hoping would come off to the driver as a cell phone. They had come to a stop about 3 feet behind me, but when I started this act, they began to drive up slowly until they were about level with where I was standing. Again, I'm like 6 feet away, standing at the edge of a drop-off, and it looks like I'm texting someone who is actively texting back. When I throw a final look at the truck, I notice the driver is staring at me, as is his passenger. The driver looks to be about 40 years old, and the guy in the passenger seat looks to be in his 30s. The first man is stout, and I swear to God, has a face that reminds me of my mom's ex. The second guy is a little leaner, but aside from that, I can't see much of him, as it was an overcast day, and about 5 to 6 in the afternoon. I see the driver look at my left pocket, at the object peeking out, the lit screen, the fingers on my left moving as if texting. Immediately, and with a sudden lurch from the truck, he begins driving again. I wait, still feigning in the act of texting, until they turn onto the main road and are out of sight. I then proceed to look around as I walk back to the road. I consider going back to rejoin my brothers and walking home with them, so I wouldn't be alone if I should cross the red truck again. But suddenly, Stanley comes running up saying there were some creepy guys riding around in the red truck. Being worried, he came to see if I had gone home okay, and said he'd walk me back. He said the others would be along shortly, and began to explain how his friends had seen that same truck driving by all day. He said that he and the boys had even seen it a few times, and asked if I had seen it myself. I told him what happened, and he expressed his worry before saying he was glad to hear that it got onto the main road. As far as we knew, there was only one road into this part of the community, and so he thought it unlikely that they would be able to get back to this neighborhood without crossing us first. We had just gone to the main road when we were joined by Stanford, George, and Arnold, where we filled them in on what happened as we walked the remaining distance home. Once inside, we recount our tale to our mom, who was making dinner. Twins Mabel and Dipper and Phil. Mom actually dropped the spoon she was using to stir the mac, as she told us that, as well as the names of the pedophiles and ex-cons. The list gave the mark, model, and color of their vehicles. She said that one such individual had a red truck. She asked if we knew what make and model the truck was, but even Stanley, who was really into cars, couldn't place it. So, creepy guys driving around in the red truck. Let's not meet again. Mohawk Predator at the Marquee Club in Vegas. Want to celebrate my 21st birthday in Vegas with my mom, my best friend Megan, and her best friend Patricia. Really nice room split between the four of us. Nicer than just us 3 college students could have afforded. Thanks, Mom. My mom went to bed early and the girls and I decided to go out clubbing. We decided to check out the Marquee Club at the Cosmopolitan, since it's supposed to be very new and chic. The cover and drinks are expensive, and Megan and Patricia suddenly don't feel like dancing, but I'm resolved to have a good time. The dance floor is small, so I decided to try my hand at dancing with strangers, knowing that my friends are visibly nearby at the bar. Most of the crowd is male, and a little older, so it's already intimidating. But eventually a younger guy with a giant mohawk starts to dance with me. He seems nice enough, we're both having a good time, typical 20-something trashy dancing, grinding from behind, etc. Suddenly he leans forward and starts trying to lick and bite the back of my neck, while simultaneously lifting my dress and trying to finger me through my tights. Jesus fucking Christ. I instantly bark no at him, push him off of me, pull my dress down, and say I need to leave. He starts to say something and grab at my arm, but I push past them and dive into the crowd, weaving as fast as possible through it to get to my friends at the bar. I don't look back until I reach my friends at the bar a few seconds later, but when I do, I obviously see that ridiculous mohawk moving towards me through the crowd. I grab Patricia and Megan and tell them to come outside with me to the patio and pool area, just to get away from him. We hang out in the corner of the patio, tucked away, while I relay the ghastly experience and tell them who to look out for. After a few minutes we realize it's cold and figure he'll be gone, so we head back together inside. We figured wrong. Mohawk Man is still circling the area between the dance floor and the bar area. We lock eyes across the space for a second, and he begins to make a beeline for me again. I panic and run with my friends to the ladies' room, as he's in between us and the exit. Startled and creeped out, we hide out in the bathroom lounge, Megan comforting me while Patricia stands there like a deer in headlights. We wait for about 10 to 15 minutes just to be sure, and then finally leave the ladies' room because the bathroom attendant starts giving us shit for hanging out. Seeing no sign of Mohawk, we quickly walk through the hallway back to the dance floor area. Mohawk Man is still there, angrily circling the entire dance floor, stalking around and clearly pissed off looking for me. What the fuck? We agree to mutually freak out and bail, rushing to the exit and cutting our night short. The club exits lets out to multiple circular levels of bars, shops, and restaurants, connected by a series of escalators and ending on the casino ground floor. We descend 2 levels and are in the middle of the escalator leading to the ground floor when Megan shouts and pushes me down to hide me. Mohawk is trampling down at like a dinosaur speed. He looks angrier than ever and dangerous. I have no idea what he expects or wants from me, but I am terrified at this point. Megan and Patricia try to hide me as best as they can and hurry me around the corner once we reach the ground floor. I literally crouched on the floor hiding behind them for 10 minutes as he reached the ground floor and circled around. I'm not sure if he gave up entirely or decided to extend his search to other parts of the casino, but he eventually left where we were hiding out. I was numb until Megan finally touched me on the shoulder and said the coast was clear. Utterly creeped out and shaken, we decide to abandon ship and run back to our hotel for safety and comfort food. So the Carnarvius, Mohawk Freak Predator visiting Vegas last March, let's not meet ever again. I hope that no one ever has to meet you. I can only hope you haven't succeeded in hunting down some other poor girl who didn't want to be love-bitten and fingered by you on a dance floor. Someone there. Okay, so hi everyone. I've been lurking for a while and decided to share my own downright skin-crawling story. I am a female when this took place. I was 21 years old, a semi-adult if you will. The other person who experienced this is my little sister Kitty. She was 13 years old. It's been a year since this took place. My sister is one of the most logical, confident, and independent people I've ever met. She doesn't scare easily. I say that because I have a twin brother, so I always was and had someone around me when I was scared or need someone, so I'm sort of like codependent person, and Kitty totally isn't, so I freak out more than her. So my brother and I left home when we were both 18 years old. So my sister and my mom stayed in my childhood home. My brother moved 3 hours away, and I only went like literally 30 minutes away. So with that being said, I still live closest to my mom and sister. In late March, early April or so of 2015, I got a call at about 2 in the morning from my sister, telling me she and my mom were headed to the emergency room because something is wrong with my mom. I roll out of bed and head to the hospital. Once I get there, they're running tests on my mom and turns out something is wrong with her intestines due to 2 surgeries, so they hospitalize her. So I end up taking 2 weeks off to care for my sister while my mom is in the hospital. The first day, night, I get this creepy feeling of being watched at my mom's house. I ignore it because I hadn't slept well because of being in the hospital from 2:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. My sister seems fine the following morning. I drive my sister to school at 8:30 a.m. and then come home to shower and dress. I leave to the hospital and turn off the lights, lock the back door that leads to the patio, and head to the hospital, locking the front door. I was at the hospital from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m., only leaving once at 3 p.m. to pick my sister up from school. During this, my twin, who is in the military and living at the base 3 hours away, knows what's going on and says he can't come home. Later that evening, my sister and I head home first, and the first thing I notice pulling into the driveway is that the lights are on, which I find very weird, because I clearly recall turning them off. Before Kitty and I go in, I circle the house looking into the windows to make sure no one is in there. Nothing. The house is empty. I figured I might have forgot to turn them off, but in the back of my mind, I know I turned them off, but I still doubted myself. The following day, same routine, lock the back door, turn lights off, and head to the hospital, locking the front door. I emphasize the back door because my mom has a chihuahua who we let out in the AM. She does her business and comes right back inside. That night, pulling into the driveway, I see a dim glow in the window, so I go in first and see my sister's bedroom lights on again. Weird. So at this point, I question my own sanity, no joke, and I bring it up to my sister, who says she's turned her bedroom light off before I drove her to school. She casually mentioned that incidents like this had been happening to my mom, who would tell her Kitty never really cared to believe my mom. So me being the codependent person I am, I decided to go home and get my dog Max, who is a Jack Russell, to keep me company at nights because my sister slept early and because I was creeped out. Max and I are sleeping in my old room, and he goes tense and stares at the window, jumps off the bed and runs barking at the window, following the windows to the living, just barking like chasing something outside through the window. I was scared to death. It was a tense feeling in the house, so I wake my sister and tell her to pack an outfit and her school stuff because we were going to my apartment. We get to my apartment, and I tell my boyfriend everything. He and I live together with our dog, since he can clearly tell I'm scared shitless, but he's also doubting my words, being my sister was asleep when my dog flipped. She says she didn't see or hear anything. He says he'll come stay at my mom's house with us the next day. He goes to the hospital with me from 9 to 2 because he had work. We briefly stopped at my mom's house to let the dog out and, do a bit of housework. When we head to the hospital, he turns the lights off, locks the back door. He leaves to work. I pick my sister up from school. We get some food and head back to the hospital. We head home at 8 p.m. so we can stop and get groceries and take our time because I didn't want to be there till my boyfriend got there. We get home at 9:15-ish. First thing I see pulling into the driveway is that there is a blue glow in the living room. My sister is already heading to the door, and I yell, "Kitty, wait, come here and look." She walks back and says, What's wrong?" I point to the window and she says, "So you left the TV on, who cares?" I go, "No, I didn't. I haven't stepped a foot in the house since I left this morning." She gets creeped out a second and says, "Maybe Marty," my twin, "came home to surprise Mom." I dial his cell phone, he answers, and I ask, "Hey, did you come home to surprise Mom or something?" He says no, and I explain what's happening. I proceed to get my sister back in my car and tell her to lock the doors. I circle my house again, looking into the windows. I see nothing. I call my boyfriend and tell him, and says he's 10 minutes away, and to get in my car and wait for him. Of course, I do just that. He goes in first and searches the house with me as his backup. He's licensed to carry, so he has his firearm ready just in case. Again, nothing, but my sister's bedroom light is on again. He says he knew he turned everything off that morning, and that her light wasn't on that morning either, nor did we turn the TV on. I tell my mom about everything, and she said she's been hearing things that night outside, but couldn't pinpoint where it was or what it was. Anyways, the next morning, my boyfriend checks the property, and he shows me footsteps in the mud. Maybe a size 11 in men's size? I wear size 5, so definitely not mine. Outside my house, under my window, and my sister's bedroom window. Nothing could really be done, being that I had no way to prove someone was coming in while the house was empty. My mom invested in an alarm system, and nothing happened the remainder of the days. I think whoever was at the windows was finding a way in, and I believe my boyfriend scared them off. So, outside creeper, let's never meet. K. Stephanie, Stalker Boyfriend, and the Owl. Preface. I met my ex when I was 17 and he was 19. He rented a room from an older couple, Dave and Sue. Dave was your typical redneck old man with a crazy sense of humor. Sue was a little Italian woman, bedridden from Parkinson's with a heart of gold. We spent many nights sitting in her bed watching medical and forensic shows on TV, and she loved to talk about her feminist and hippie days. We remained close even after my ex and I split up. Their little trailer was on the end of a private drive in the country and surrounded by trees. Dave was a paper carrier. He delivered to several gas stations and residences. After a delivery at a 24-hour BP, a woman came running and screaming from a nearby hotel. Her boyfriend had beaten the fuck out of her. Dave told her to hop into his car and call the police for her. Her name was Stephanie. Stephanie was a recovering addict and a former prostitute. She had nowhere to go. Sue agreed that she could stay with them until she got straightened out. Sue passed away a few months later, March of 2012. I was absolutely devastated and drove over to see David. I hadn't met Stephanie at that point. We became fast friends and helped Dave with Sue's funeral. Stephanie and I would take over Dave's paper route a couple nights a week so he could get some rest from the otherwise 7-days-a-week job. She told me all about her ex, Chucky, and how she still loved him even though she knew he was bad for her and was afraid of him. We noticed the same white car following us from a distance every night that we were on the route. We were a little paranoid but figured it was just an employee from one of the nearby factories heading home. One night, we were getting ready to go out on routes, but Stephanie had misplaced Dave's keys. I offered to go check the ignition and the car's console. As soon as I stepped outside, I felt a feeling like I never experienced before. Ominous. Dark. Like a run now feeling. But I kept on walking. The car was parked next to the edge of the woods. As I walked closer, I heard an owl start hooting, frantically. Stephanie opened the door and yelled, "We found the keys!" I took off running back to the house and told her about the weird feeling and the owl, which she had not heard. "This is a private drive. Nobody comes up here. The only person that's crazy enough to come bother us would be Chucky, but he doesn't have a car. Oh fuck. His dad has a white car. Unfortunately, Stephanie eventually left Dave's house, relapsed into drugs, and fell back into her toxic relationship with Chucky. He admitted to watching me from the woods that night, and also entering the house when we were gone. Dave was a very heavy sleeper and had no idea.